How to make an art style reflective of you, your interests, your aesthetics, and your value system. To me, the concept always came along naturally with my art journey. However, I've noticed a lot more people nowadays looking for guidance on the subject. And I wanted to deconstruct what even necessarily makes a unique and well-formed style for an individual. I'll give you my perspective on how I grew and where I am now, and how you can do it too in a way that fulfills you as a creative. I'm Saba Black Sheep, have you any soul? No sir, but today we are going to be examining the burgeoning of art styles and the implications they have on your art journey. But before we get into that, consider checking out my webcomic, Penelope's Peon. If you enjoy character-oriented writing, commentary on the human condition, and tend to enjoy medias like Disco Elysium, you might really like it. Link in the description, it's on Tapas. If that doesn't tickle your pickle, consider joining the Patreon, where we have weekly exclusive Patreon streams where I draw whatever you want. Or just joining the 17+ Discord server to meet a bunch of cool artists and get your art in the next video. But without further ado, we begin. Art styles are something we all know well, and tend to have regardless of what stage we are in our art journey. Oftentimes we take what inspires us and replicate it, and over time it becomes a hodgepodge of so many different styles, it almost wholly becomes something unique. But there are many who just jump from style to style, never really settling into a single one to refine it entirely. Modern art styles tend to have some aspect of anime to them. I'm sure most of us by this point have started drawing because of anime. The anime surge of the early 2000s turned many a soul to the passion of the art industry. You can even see as the original anime kids grew up and integrated themselves into the animation industry, since we often see media far more resembling anime styles and cadence in more recent shows, like The Owl House. Plethora of American-made anime-style shows. It's not uncommon for artists to be told to stop drawing anime, but in reality, it's honestly a great place to start. Even me, whose art is like this, started like this. I started drawing consistently around 8 years old. My art at the time was mostly just Pokemon, a story as old as time by this point. I pretty much exclusively drew anime until 12 to 13 years old. I watched so much anime, it felt like it was the only thing to really replicate. But then around 7th grade, I realized other styles existed, so I started trying a few. I started with this kind of cartoony ragdoll style for a little bit. It was cute and simple. I enjoyed that until I got bored by its simplicity. Then I realized semi-realistic art styles existed. I liked the seriousness of them, the kind of dark tones used, so I gave it a try. And naturally, it turned out weird looking and uncanny. But within my 12 to 13 year, I kept practicing and created my kid magnum opus. This one drawing of Jesse McCree from Overwatch. This is what cemented my love for more realistic styles. The refining and rendering was so much fun, working out every tiny little detail to create something with such life. From there, I went to 8th grade, refining and working on this semi-realistic style. Piece after piece, working out facial structure and anatomy. At this time, I pretty much exclusively drew traditionally. I liked this heavy, dark shadow aesthetic, so I leaned into it. As 9th grade came, so 14 to 15 years old, my semi-realistic style had become my baseline. But I missed the freedom of more cartoony styles, something that had flow rather than always rendered. So I started drawing in this vague anime style again. This allowed me to break down the human body while understanding anatomy on a deeper level, the flow of bodies. But I struggled with making my more realistic figures flow in the same way, so I kept practicing. 10th grade came and I joined an art high school. This is the year I started using digital art. I still drew most of my stuff in sketchbooks, however my interest in digital art was piqued. But I met my biggest hurdle, coloring, and transitioning my very sketchy style to a digital medium. At first, I tried the rendered style, but found I lacked the foundation to really understand what went where and why. So I'd often have one good piece once in a blue moon, and then the rest were just terrible for the most part. It made creating art quite discouraging, so I tried something new. Instead of rendering with colors, I started rendering with the line work instead, creating this dark, chaotic art style that was messy. The line work was always interesting, but as soon as it came to coloring, it tended to fall apart and look strange. I kept trying as the years passed, some pieces turning out well, others not so much. My understanding of color was a long process of trial and error, and sometimes it still is. So when I was 19, so 2023, I moved out of America into an Eastern European country called Georgia. I spent the entire year inside working on art. It was the start of my YouTube channel and my dedication to comics and storytelling as the end goal. I posted on TikTok every single day, developing my cartoon style from this to this just in a few months. I spent 10 hours every day working on art. This year was so foundational to my art and career, despite the massive spout of depression and alcoholism this year came with. At this point, I just gave up on color in my rendered pieces. All my art from this time often didn't involve much color, as I didn't understand it well, so I just didn't do it. I used color sparingly and just tried to figure out how to render the best I could. Nearing the end is when I started trying my hand at color again. And man, was it awkward and strange, but I stuck with it. I came back to America after that year and continued to try coloring. I finally started to understand it a bit better, how to balance it, and my work went from extremely gloomy and muted to almost aesthetically colorful. Which I'm a very apathetic person by nature and tend to avoid much color and style in daily life, so my art style being so colorful felt juxtaposed by my identity. But the fun of rendering trumped this identity of being muted and gray. I went far into the warm direction for about a year. All my work tended to feel vibrant and high fantasy, and I leaned into the high fantasy as at the time, I was playing a lot of this MMORPG called Elder Scrolls Online, which had a high fantasy vibe to it. Now the modern era, what made my art go from this heavily rendered aesthetic to this more loose and painterly muted style. Disco Elysium. I could rant about my undying love for this game till our time ends and the sun swallows us whole, Chrono style. I didn't think soulmates existed until I learned of this game and thought, if there was ever a media that tickled my pickle, it was this game. It didn't just tickle my pickle, it fucking was my pickle. Disco Elysium, this wholly unique world that feels as though it's divorced from our reality entirely. It balances humor and this irrevocably soul-crushing commentary on the human condition, with the reverence dancing between absurdity, whimsy, and this innate human dread that connects us all, oscillating between satire and rawness. The philosophical and political commentary intrigued me, and I was on the edge of my seat every damn second. This game changed my work so much. Before, I felt disconnected from my work. On a technical level, my work was good, professional even, but the smoothness, the bright, high-rendered aesthetic felt so strange compared to who I really was and the type of things I enjoyed. Someone who is apathetic, who is critical, enjoys very muted old tones. Disco Elysium sparked that connection. I started making fan art for the game with reckless abandon. See, I've never really drawn fan art consistently, especially by this point in my life where all my work has a purpose. It serves, that being, for my career. But Disco Elysium, I loved too much to grindset mindset about it. I just drew, and through this passion, a style started to emerge, and a story began to paint itself. The muted watercolored vibes of Disco Elysium began to bleed into my passion to the point I created Penelope's Peon, my webcomic. Disco Elysium recentered my art and made it truly mine again. All this to say, art style is never truly complete. It grows beside you. So explore your passions with reckless abandon. Even if it's hard, give it a try regardless. If I never forced myself to work with colors, I would have never been where I am now. I went pretty much a whole year feeling like my art style didn't really fit my personality. So if you're at that point, that's okay. Look at your passions and look to reevaluate what you consider good art is. The reason I fell so heavily on the smooth rendered style was because it's what I thought was just universally considered good. It showed skill, and I enjoyed making those pieces undoubtedly, but it definitely felt more like a story I was creating, rather than something that actually reflected my value system. I thought the more loose painterly style lacked that cohesive skill I wanted to be respected for. But I find a level of humanness in this painterly style. I still keep it concise since I love the human body and rendering the face, so I think that will always be a center point in my work. But reconsidering your art value system may allow you to experiment and find something that fits you even better. Copy art styles you think look good. It's important to interact with art styles for what it is, something that is in a constant state of growth beside you. Now, those of you that want to go into the animation industry, knowing how to replicate other styles and switch on a dime is incredibly important, as your job is to jump from project to project. So learning a bunch of different styles and being well versed in how it affects anatomy will be important. On the other hand, if you want to be an independent animator or comic artist, it will be impertinent to find a style that is easier to replicate over and over again. But that also heavily depends on how far you push your rendered art. It will often set a baseline for what you can replicate easily. This is a page of my comic Penelope's Peon. Drawing this face is quite easy for me. This style takes me all of 15 minutes to draw a single figure in, if even that. Due to my rendered art and drawing faces like this multiple times a day every day for almost 3 years now, my baseline is just able to replicate higher detailed figures in a timely manner. So working on learning to replicate something with more detail isn't off the table. It just takes time knowing your ability and what's possible for where you're at. I don't color my comic, as it'd make my process much longer. My skills lay mostly in the anatomy and the way I draw faces. Though I've gotten better at coloring, it still isn't a fast process for me, so I kept that out of my comic. If you have a more simple style, you might find coloring a worthwhile sacrifice that is doable for you. Most popular comics nowadays are in color, so you'll have an advantage in the webcomic space. Art styles serve practical and personal use, and it may take some time to find a balance, but have some patience and keep trying new things. I hope this video provided some insight on the topic. That's all I have for today, folks. If you like my art, consider commissioning me. You can reach out to me on Discord. You got work tomorrow, or school, or talking about art styles again. But as always, don't dream about wheat-based byproducts. Je m'appelle Mademoiselle Noire, et qu'on va pour la voir, j'en sais rien.